What's up, everybody? Hardest part of the ring here again. Back at you with some NWA talk. No, I am not talking about those fellas with an attitude. I'm talking about the National Wrestling Alliance. Woo! Alright, ignore that. So if you don't know, NWA has made a resurgence in the past few months or so. Really more than that. Obviously, so look, I was born in 1993, okay? So I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I have all this advanced knowledge about what the NWA and what the NWA was and kind of, how it's progressed. But I can tell you, for one thing, that the NWA is a great palate cleanser for all the bullshit we have nowadays. You have AEW, you have NXT, you have New Japan, you have all these various independents around the country, around the world, really, and you get a lot of the same thing. At times it feels like independent wrestling kind of has its own style, which some people like. I get that, but for me, the thing that makes wrestling great is the characters and the storylines. You obviously have the bell-to-bell stuff to pay off all of the build that's been created between two characters or two entities of some sort in wrestling, right? That's what made Stone Cold and Rock so great. That's what made Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes so great. It's not that they were doing shooting star presses into super kicks. It's not they were doing suicide dives all over the place. It's that they had a story behind them. It's that their characters were strong, their characters were defined, and they gave the audience an understanding of who these people were and why they were fighting. And that is something that is unfortunately very absent nowadays. And that is something that I feel gets overlooked and I feel gets brushed to the side. But then you have a company like NWA come back. You have their YouTube show, NWA Powerrr. You watch these characters and you understand what made wrestling so great back in the day. You understand why it was such a phenomenon, such a pop culture phenomenon. It's not the moves they were doing. It's the performance they were giving based on their characters. And that is something that NWA is striving to bring back. And it's something that I personally am a huge fan of. Because there's no pomp and circumstance, right? On NWA Powerrr, there's no music in their entrances. There was on the pay-per-view, we'll get to that. But, I don't know if it's going to be something where, like, on the shows they have music or they don't have music, and the pay-per-views they do. But you watch NWA Powerrr on YouTube, and there's no music. They kind of just walk out. They have the classic podium that they had back in the day with whoever interviewer is there. That where you would see these old Ric Flair promos or old Dusty Rhodes or old Harley Race promos on that podium in this studio. This very intimate crowd watching, and you're just watching people talk, and they're not yelling at the camera generally. And then they're talking, and it feels organic. It doesn't feel like a cookie cutter formulaic. Let me get my catchphrase in. Let me get my cool insult in. Let me do something to pop the crowd, and then bang bang boom, do it all over again. No, it's people talking from their heart. It's people talking. I listened to a podcast with Billy Corgan and Dave Lagana, who are the executive producers of NWA Powerrr, and they basically said that these guys have no script when they go out and cut a promo. And really you can't, because you're in that intimate setting, right? I mean, it's a studio. I don't know how many people it'll hold, maybe like 100 or so, maybe a little more than that, but the crowd interaction is a big part of it. Just to give one example, on one of the shows, you had Eli Drake come out there, right? And he's doing his promo. He's doing he's going through the bullets that he needs to hit. He's doing his typical Eli Drake thing, which I love. But then the crowd starts chanting something, and if you're not familiar, so if you're listening to this, you're either one, very familiar with NWA and you just want to hear about the pay-per-view and my takes on it, or you have no idea why I'm talking about NWA and you're interested about it and you're interested with what they're doing in modern day wrestling. But just, you know, I say that because you may or may not have seen the episodes, but there's basically this one character called the Question Mark, who's basically just this guy who wears a mask and a black singlet, and he calls himself the Question Mark. It's a whole thing. I can't really explain it. I can't do it justice, but this guy called the Question Mark, he has a match, and then in the next segment, Eli Drake comes out and cuts a promo. As Eli Drake is cutting this promo, because Question Mark is so over, people in the crowd are chanting Question Mark as Eli Drake is cutting this promo. So they're going, Question Mark, and Eli Drake stops him, and he's like, you guys are talking about a question mark, but I'm gonna give you an exclamation. That's like, that kind of improv is so awesome. That and that's what makes it so great, right? Because there's no script, so a lot of what they have to do is rely on what they really feel inside them about the storylines they're involved in, and they speak passionately from the heart, or, you know, just with their general humor or their general wit, and it really separates somebody who is not apt to talk on the mic from somebody like Eli Drake, who is just tremendous at it. And that part really, that aspect of this, the unscripted promos, it really is indicative of the genuine nature of this show, because, you know, it's like I said, there's no music, there's no pyro, there's no flashing lights, there's no stupid gimmicks. I mean, there are stupid gimmicks. I just talked about a guy called the Question Mark, but you know what I mean. It's very bare bones. It's bare bones. There's a prominent amount of emphasis on the characters and rivalries between those characters, and that I say it's an old school feel. And when people hear old school, they might associate that with outdated. But it's not. It's different. I'm not gonna say it's better or worse, because at the end of the day, wrestling is subjective. Some people really might not like this. People really might not like NWA and what they're doing. That's fine. But personally, I think wrestling is at its strongest when the characters are also at their strongest, and rivalries and feuds mean something, which make championships mean something, which make matches mean something, which makes the show mean something. And to me, NWA is still in its infancy as far as its return goes, as far as NWA Powerrr goes, but I see this promotion building to something great, and I think people are going to keep coming. I think people are going to keep jumping on the bandwagon. We'll get more into that later, with a huge name jumping on the bandwagon at the end of the pay-per-view. But just in general, I love NWA. I love what they're doing, and I hope they stick around for a long time, because I think this is something that is desperately needed. And all the craziness of wrestling nowadays, you need something like this. Like I said, it's a palate cleanser. It's no bullshit. It's bare bones, and it's still very entertaining. So if you have not given NWA Powerrr a chance, I strongly suggest you do that. Like I said, it's on YouTube. Just type in NWA. They have their own YouTube channel. Go to that. It's all free. Like, there's no reason not to watch it. Unless you're an asshole, which maybe you are. It's something new, it's something different. In my opinion, you know, AEW tries to brand themselves as the alternative for pro wrestling, but in my opinion, NWA Powerrr is that true alternative. So if you haven't given it a shot, I strongly suggest that you do that. But I'm sure a lot of you listening already have given it a shot, and you may or may not have watched NWA Into the Fire. And if you did not watch the show, I would definitely suggest it. I wouldn't say it was the perfect show. There were definitely some parts that I did not like. But there was a lot of stuff I did like. And at the end of the day, it's an easy watch. It's like a little over 2 hours. And, you know, with all these fucking 8-hour pay-per-views we get nowadays, a 2-hour pay-per-view is a very easy watch. And like I said, it's something different. It's different even if you have been keeping up with NWA Powerrr, because I was very curious. I was curious as to how they were going to make this feel like a big show, you know? Because like I said, it's a very intimate crowd. It's in a studio, just like it was back in the day. My thought, not my concern, but my curious my curious thought was, how are they going to take this in today's day and age? Because today you see these huge 10,000, 100,000 plus stadiums, arenas, whatever you may have it. You have these huge venues filled with people, and all the lights and the fireworks and the cheerleaders and the whatever the fuck wrestling company might have for a pay-per-view, and then to go over to an NWA and just have like this small little building. How are they going to make that feel like a big deal? And a very subtle thing they did was just add entrance music to the guys' entrances, which, like I said, on their weekly TV show, they don't have that. So just a simple addition of music made it feel like, oh shit, this is something big. And just the matches were longer than you would generally see on the TV show, things like that, and it felt cool. It felt like a bigger deal than you would get on the normal TV show. So straight from the top, first match was Eli Drake versus Ken Anderson. Sorry, Mr. Anderson. So this match started Anderson. So these guys basically, as far as the build to this match goes, they both want to be NWA champion. This match is almost like kind of a stepping stone to the #1 contendership, really. I mean, you have, I think the week before, Eli Drake attacked Ken Anderson in the back with a turnbuckle. So that kind of added a little layer to the storyline. But at the end of the day, it's two guys that are on top of the heap fighting for that #1 spot. So Eli Drake versus Ken Anderson. Ken Anderson, obviously a lot of you guys know him from his WWE run or maybe his TNA run. I wasn't even really sure he was still wrestling until I started watching NWA. Definitely seems like he's in the twilight of his career. I mean, I know he's already had like a shit ton of injuries in his career. And he doesn't seem, he's still in decent shape. He's definitely like tapered down since we last saw him. Even like TNA, I think he's definitely gotten a little softer. Doesn't seem like he has like the same fire he used to have, but still can definitely put on a show. Still has that charisma. I've always thought him and Eli Drake had a similar, I don't know if they were just like raised in the same area or what, or if their humors are just very similar. But I've always compared them, Eli Drake and Ken Anderson, as far as their promo ability goes, as far as their characters go. So it was kind of I don't want to say a dream match between these two, but it was cool to kind of see these two very similar characters lock up. It was a decent match. It was probably like 10 minutes or so. I don't have the times in front of me or anything, but it was a good match. This match really highlighted how athletically talented Eli Drake is, and how crafty of a veteran Ken Anderson is, and a cool simple finish. Ken Anderson going for a sunset flip power bomb. Eli Drake basically just sits down. The old bulldog Bret Hart finish. Eli Drake sits down and it grabs Ken Anderson's legs and keeps his shoulders down for the quick pin. Good finish, pretty good match. It was a good start to the show. And then another aspect that I didn't even get into. We all know the thing that happened with Jim Cornette and the whole Trevor Murdoch thing, where he said he would. What did he say? He said that if he had KFC on his back, he couldn't get through Ethiopia. I'm paraphrasing, but whatever line he said, that racially insensitive line that he said, basically got him booted from the commentator's table, because it was originally Jim Cornette in the color position with Joe Galley as the play-by-play. But Jim Cornette was booted. He quote-unquote resigned from his position. So they replaced him with Stu Bennett, a.k.a. Wade Barrett, which I've never heard. From what I understand, Wade Barrett's done some commentary before in certain British independents, but I was not aware of it, or I've never heard it personally. But man, oh man, Stu Bennett is dynamite at the commentator's table, man. Like legitimately one of the best that I've definitely one of the best going today for sure. Because he has like, first of all, he has the voice for it, like just like the tone of his voice, like that, you know what I'm saying? And then he has, because as a commentator, it's something I feel like gets lost on people. Your goal is to put the talent in the ring over, and that sounds like such a simple premise, but so many people are focusing on, like you have Jim Ross now, right? He's just focused on, people not hooking the legs properly, or just people taking too much time to do certain moves, which a lot of that is warranted. Don't get me wrong, but you could manipulate your phrasing in a way to tie it into the character, into that universe, which people like Jim Ross don't do. Even people like, I don't know, people like Corey Graves don't do very well a lot. But Stu Bennett is great at that. He's great. He immerses himself in the universe, and he's very articulate when he does it. So it just his voice. I wanted to commentate my entire life, man. Loved Stu Bennett at the commentator's table. Just wanted to throw that in there because I thought he was such a great part of the show. So yeah, you have Eli Drake beating Ken Anderson. Next match, Thunder Rosa versus the debuting Tasha Steelz. Thunder Rosa, I mean, I personally am not too familiar with her background, but from what I understand, she's also a mixed martial arts competitor and has experience wrestling in Mexico and other places like that. So she has that lucha libre style mixed in with the MMA style, which, in my opinion, the women's division in NWA isn't the strongest, but Thunder Rosa is definitely a diamond in the rough as far as that division goes. And her opponent here, Tasha Steelz, this is actually her debut. She hasn't been featured on NWA Powerrr or anything. This is her first match, which I thought was curious. Basically, a Puerto Rican. I don't know. I get that from what I understand. That's her gimmick, is that she's Puerto Rican. But she had a lot of charisma. She came out and cut a promo. So I'm kind of looking forward to what she brings to the table, because a lot of the women on the NWA roster don't have a lot of star power. They don't have a lot of conviction on the mic. But Tasha Steelz definitely seems like she could bring a lot of that to the table. So I'm excited to see what her future holds. As far as this match goes, pretty good. I mean, kind of pretty much all you can ask for as far as like a match that really didn't have a lot of build to it. But Thunder Rosa gets the win here. They're definitely building her to be the next contender for the women's championship here. So no surprise there, but definitely a good match. But after the match, another women's competitor in NWA, Ashley Vox, she comes out because Thunder Rosa, after the match, starts beating up on Steelz, and then Ashley Vox comes out to try to save her, and then she gets the shit kicked out of her. Ashley Vox does, and then she gets basically her arm broken. And Ashley Vox is in a match later in the show, so that's basically setting up, okay, is she going to be ready to compete in a few minutes in the show, or is she going to have to be replaced, or is it going to be a handicap match? So, typical stuff you see, but they did it as well as they could have. The next match, Trevor Murdoch versus the question mark. Yes, I said Trevor Murdoch. Apparently he is still wrestling. He's definitely gotten a little bigger since we last saw him on WWE, but he's still got that same style he has, did that no bullshit, that Dick Murdoch, Harley Race style. It's definitely something, NWA, their whole gimmick is that they're basically an homage to the days of old, and Trevor Murdoch fits right in there with that, and to see him mix it up with kind of the new breed is something very interesting. I think that's a very necessary part of the show. But here we have Trevor Murdoch facing the question mark, and the question mark is super over for some reason with that crowd. He's basically Josephus, who I don't know if he wrestles anywhere else other than NWA, but he was on the first few episodes. So it's literally just Josephus. If you don't know who Josephus is, he is how his name sounds. Whatever you're picturing, that's what Josephus is. But the question mark is basically Josephus wearing a mask, and he's from the hailed country of Monrovia. I've summered in Monrovia a few times, so I could say that it's definitely a prestigious place to call your home. So the match ends up, and question mark, by the way, has formed an alliance with Erin Stevens, the former Damien Sandow, and this match starts out, and basically, okay, sorry, it's a lot to unpack here. So the question mark is not only a proud member of the Mongrovian community, but he is also a third-degree black belt in karate. Not karate, karate. And he's basically he's been teaching karate to Erin Stevens. So Erin Stevens comes out in his gi and his third-degree black belt. I'm sorry. Question Mark is not a third degree. He is I'm sure the highest black belt you could be in karate. But Erin Stevens is only a third degree from his teachings from the Question Mark. So Stevens comes out in this gi, basically standing ringside with the Question Mark. But before the match begins, they start with the Mongrovian national anthem. And if you watch nothing else on this show other than that, I would suggest give that a watch, because watching the Question Mark sing the national anthem of this made-up fucking country in this made-up fucking language with Erin Stevens standing trying to keep a straight face next to him holding the Mongrovian flag is one of the greatest things I've ever seen as a human. So that was good shit. Good shit pre-match. Loved it. Loved every second of it. But the match itself was what it was, whatever. Trevor Murdoch is a true veteran. He's one of those guys, for some reason, I love watching him wrestle. I mean, Question Mark obviously is a comedy character at the roots, so the match is only gonna be but so epic. But for what it was, I thought it was great. A lot of the crowd was into it. And yeah, good on both of them. So you had the Question Mark eventually coming out on top with the dreaded Mongrovian spike to the throat of Trevor Murdoch with the easy 1, 2, 3. You count to 100 after that chop or spike or whatever the fuck it's called. But yeah, Question Mark wins as always. Next match, you have the NWA Tag Team Championships. The challengers are the Wild Cards, who are comprised of Tom Latimer and Royce Isaacs. You might know Tom Latimer as Bram from his TNA days. So you have the Wild Cards versus the champions, the Rock and Roll Express. And if you're thinking, oh man, they got some new young guys and they're branding themselves as the Rock and Roll Express, that's pretty cool. And which I would say to you, no. It's the actual Rock and Roll Express, the actual 90-year-old Robert Gibson and Ricky Morton. The actual Rock and Roll Express are now 9-time NWA Tag Team Champions. And I mean, you saw them. You may have, if you watched AEW's last pay-per-view. These two can go more than they should be able to. I mean, obviously they're not as good as they were when they won their first championships, 30 years ago, but they still got enough to put on a more than passable match with the Wild Cards. Ultimately, believe it or not, getting the win over Tom Latimer and Royce Isaacs. Yeah, so I should mention, in this match, the Rock and Roll Express had the team of Eddie Kingston and Homicide in their corner, and the Wild Cards had the Dawsons, Zane and Dave Dawson, I believe their names are. So it's kind of basically setting the table for the tag division here in NWA. Kind of getting a feel for how it's going to progress forward. The tag division, kind of like the women's division, it's not super strong. Obviously, you have the Rock and Roll Express as the tag team champions in 2019, but they're still building. I have optimism going forward. But this match was better than it had any right to be. And good stuff all around. Speaking of tag matches, the next match is Alison Kay, who is the NWA Women's Champion, originally supposed to team with Ashley Vox, and there we're going to face Melina and Marty Bell. But as you heard from my voice telling you, Ashley Vox was brutally assaulted earlier in the night, so she is unable to compete in this match. So Alison Kay needs a new partner, and who else would be her partner other than Old Dirty Bitch ODB making her return here to NWA, and man, oh man, was the crowd hot for it. Definitely kind of a typical ODB, same old. Melina, kind of you get what you get with her. She was never a crazy athlete in the ring, but she definitely held her own here. Marty Bell stinks. Get rid of her. And Alison Kay was she's a champion. She's definitely like the Charlotte of this division. Just this tall, strong, blonde woman. And yeah, she carries herself like a champion. And but I'm gonna be honest, I don't even remember who won this match. It was kind of a whatever match. I mean, Melina and Marty Bell kind of just a team thrown together. Marty Bell is probably one of the worst wrestlers I've ever seen in my life, so she kind of brought Melina down with her. And then, ODB is old, as her name entails, and then Alison Kay did the best she could to carry this match, but you can only do so much with what you're given. Next match is the NWA National Championship match. You have the champion here, Colt Cabana, in a triple threat match defending his title against Ricky Starks and Erin Stevens. Erin Stevens has removed his gi and replaced it with his terrifying nude-colored trunks. I hope he does that as a goof, and it doesn't really think that looks good, because my God, that is a great heel move. That's very terrifying to see. Colt Cabana is as good as he's ever been. I don't think he gets the credit that he deserves, because he does all the comedy stuff, and he's really great at that, and he's entertaining at that, but he can really put on a great match when he wants to. Ricky Starks, I'm not too familiar with what he did before NWA, but from what I've seen from him, he's definitely got a very bright future. He's got a lot of charisma. I'm having a hard time telling if he's supposed to be a heel or a babyface, but he has a lot of charisma, a lot of athleticism, and I think in time he'll mold into a huge star for this company if he stays there, or for whatever company he ends up going to. And then you obviously have Erin Stevens, who is hilarious and just a dickhead when he wants to be, and I think he brings a lot, not only to this match, but he brings a lot to NWA in general. He's one of the most entertaining aspects of it, in my opinion. But this match is pretty good. You have Erin Stevens kind of being a coward outside of the ring, like hiding behind the Christmas tree. They had like a little Christmas tree set up by the commentator's table, and like they cut over it part of the match. And the tree has like a little skirt, because it's like on a platform, right? And it has like a little black skirt around it. And Erin Stevens is like laying under it like it's a blanket, like trying to hide from the guys in the match. So it's pretty much a match between Colt Cabana and Ricky Starks. But then Erin Stevens, because he comes out there with question mark, right? Because obviously they're a tag team. Yeah, basically question mark gets involved. Erin Stevens sneaks in when nobody's looking and gets the sneaky pin over who did he pin? Doesn't matter who he pinned. Basically, Erin Stevens snuck in there, got the pin, and now he is the NWA National Champion. It's I could see people not liking this match, but it was pretty entertaining in my opinion, because Erin Stevens is fucking great. And with that brings us to the main event. You have the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship being defended by the champion Nick Aldis versus James Storm. I expected more of this match, honestly. I think both these guys have great characters. I think they both have a lot of conviction whenever they talk. I think they both are very genuine. I think they are both very smooth on the mic, and I believe them when they talk. I believe them when they are creating heat between each other. If we're just talking about the bell-to-bell wrestling here, it left a lot to be desired, in my opinion. I think because I believe you have James Storm getting the quick pin, right, with his super kick, the kind of out of nowhere, catching Nick Aldis by surprise, which is good. Then they wrestle a little longer, and then Nick Aldis gets a win. Gets like a roll-up win, I believe. It's 2 out of 3 falls, obviously, so the final fall is being decided. And then, another detail I should have mentioned. So it's 2 out of 3 falls. So James Storm gets to pick the ref for the first fall. Nick Aldis gets to pick the ref for the second fall. And then the third fall, the referee is decided by a coin toss, which, fine, whatever. James Storm just picks Brian Hebner, who's a normal referee. Nick Aldis picks Tim Storm, who is the former NWA champion that Nick Aldis beat to capture the championship. But Nick Aldis and Tim Storm have formed a bond over the past few weeks, so they're kind of friendly. So the premise of that is, okay, Nick Aldis thinks Tim Storm's gonna call the match in his favor, which sets the storyline, sets the possibilities for the match, builds it up. So now we have the match and we see what happens. So first fall, James Storm wins. Second fall, Nick Aldis wins. Third fall, the referee ends up being Brian Hebner. So that ultimately takes the Tim Storm storyline out of the equation, or at least we think, or at least we thought at the moment. So they have a pretty good match, a pretty solid match. Then Brian Hebner gets clothesline out of his fucking boots. He ends up being like on the ground for like the last 20 minutes of the show from this clothesline. So Tim Storm basically has to take over for the referee position. Nick Aldis puts James Storm in Texas Cloverleaf, or whatever he calls it. I guess that's his finisher. Tim Storm basically calls the match without James Storm tapping out. So James Storm's in the hold, but basically Tim Storm makes the call that he's no longer able to compete, so he calls for the bell. Nick Aldis wins. Nick Aldis retains the championship. So kind of a dusty finish, kind of a confusing, honestly kind of anticlimactic finish. I feel like they could have done so much more with what they were given here. I feel like Tim Storm could have played obviously he ultimately played the biggest part of the match, but I feel like it could have been a little bit more to script. And you had like Nick Aldis's former manager, Camille, it's kind of a question on if she's on siding with Nick Aldis or James Storm here. So I feel like that could have played a bigger part in this match as well. Maybe they're doing more going forward. From my understanding, they have another pay-per-view coming up here in about a month and a half. So maybe there'll be a continuation of this. However, I neglected to mention that after this match concluded, Nick Aldis walked up to the podium with his title. It was kind of promo, and then the lights go out, and then you hear that ominous, that very noticeable whoop whoop. Then lo and behold, Marty Scurll, umbrella and all, walks out, basically letting everybody know that he's joined NWA, which caught me off guard. I had no idea. I figured he would definitely go to AEW. I know he has a bunch of buddies there, but looks like he's joining the NWA, and I'm super pumped for that, because that's like a character that I feel like is kind of the type of character that's kind of missing from NWA, and I assume he'll be right in the title picture, challenging Nick Aldis. So we'll see what happens with that as well. But hell yeah, Marty Scurll, love it. But yeah, that was the end of a pretty great show, and NWA is just it's a cool show, man. I mean, if you're a little older than I am, you were really into wrestling back in the the 70s and 80s, around that time frame. They keep consistent with that tone of back in the day, but they add their modern flair to it. So basically, you can't lose with NWA. So yeah, Into the Fire, good show, I recommend it, and look forward to how they progress going forward. So with that, I think that pretty much covers it. Thank you guys for listening. Don't forget to follow, subscribe to whatever platform you listen to this on. If you leave a review or star rating, I will literally come over there and give you a kiss on the lips. But yeah, that's about it. So if you aren't hard right now, then what was it? Don't just get hard. Stay hard.